It'll be Bucs Steelers Saturday night in Pittsburgh. The Buccaneers got on the plane for their first road trip of the preseason anyway, and headed on up to Pittsburgh on Tuesday afternoon, early morning, whatever it was. And they will practice today amongst themselves. And then on Thursday afternoon, they'll have a joint practice with Aaron Rodgers and the boys. Although I saw a picture of Rodgers with a big ice bag on his leg. I don't know what that was. And I don't know if it was the leg where he hurt his Achilles either. But didn't look good. I guess he's okay. I don't know. He's out there.
Either that or it's training camp. Like, oh, I felt something. Oh, I'm going to put a bag on so I don't have to practice today.
Maybe. Yeah. Could be a veteran move. But hopefully we'll get to see him. Of course, the Bucs were one of the first teams to practice against him when he joined the New York Jets back in the day up there in the greater New York area. So New Jersey, I guess. But that'll be something I'm looking forward to doing. Looking forward to going up there. I'm told it might have some lows in the 70s, which sounds good to me right about now. Maybe mid 80s in the afternoon. So
not the humidity. So even mid 80s is fine.
Yeah, just dry air would be nice. Looking forward to that. And there was a little bit of news, actually a really good story and a profile on Jason Licht by The Athletic and my good friend Dan Pompei, who used to work for the Chicago Tribune for years and years, covered the Bears, was an NFL writer up there, and has been with The Athletic for several years. He moved down here to the greater Tampa Bay area, and I wish he hadn't, because now he just keeps writing about the Bucs. But he's really good, and he's a friend of mine, so he did a nice job with this story about Jason. It's basically a lot of the things that we've written and reported before. The access was really good. He got to talk to his wife, Blair, and of course, Jason's story is such that it's pretty remarkable where he came from, and as a walk-on at Nebraska, and just all those things that transpired with his family. His dad was an alcoholic, and yet worked really hard, and he ended up transferring to Nebraska Wesleyan. Kind of got into pro football. Little by accident, not really, but Nebraska's defensive coordinator, Charlie McBride, really liked Jason. He recommended him for an internship with the Dolphins, and that's how it began. Now he was thinking about going into an insurance for $35,000 a year, and the Dolphins internship only paid $6,000 a year. But he resigned. He was resigned to taking the interim job until he talked to his dad, and his dad told him, "Hey, don't settle on money. Follow your dream." And Jason went down to Miami, and the rest, as they say, is history. So it's a cool story. Follows, him and his wife, and some of the bad picks that he made early on. He didn't have any trouble determining what players were, but character was a bit of an issue with the Anthony Collins and the Michael Johnsons as free agents, and Vernon Hargraves wasn't a very good pick, and Deshaun Jackson they got as a free agent, and he was, he said today he would never sign a Deshaun Jackson, even though a few years later he signed Antonio Brown. So I really don't know the difference there. But the one that made headlines, and I even said this to Jason, a really good story, but what's getting all the attention, is that Licht said, and this is from the story, in hindsight, Licht believes he was fooled in 2019 when he chose linebacker Devin White in the first round. Thought that was an interesting choice of word, fooled. White was a starter for the better part of 5 years for the Bucs, but eventually was let go. He's with his third team since. And the quote is, "Knowing what I know now, he would have been off my board. It was way too much about him." Interesting.
Very interesting.
And I can see why it got attention. Now, ironically, Devin White is with the Las Vegas Raiders, whose GM is Light's former right-hand man, John Spytek. And this is like you said, his third or fourth team, third team, I think, since he left the Bucs. I don't know if he's going to make the Raiders. And I've said this on this podcast. This was one of the most dramatic fall from grace of any player that I think I've covered. And not in a got arrested way or has a lot of vices way, but just kind of stopped playing well, and had other priorities maybe. like money or horses, and just didn't get along, with his coaches. He had a very, very high opinion of himself. But I will say this, and I would challenge Jason on this, is that knowing what you know now, yeah, maybe the 5th overall pick was way high, and of course, it all fell apart when he was going into year 5 under his contract, and he wanted $100 million. He wanted an extension for $100 million, and so he kind of had to hold out and whatnot. He wound up playing into the 5th-year club option for like 11-7, and then it all fell apart for him. The big divorce kind of happened in Green Bay during a game before a game when we got word that he was going to be inactive, and he had practiced that week late in the week, and it said inactive / coach's decision. And it was like, what? Wait, what? Nobody puts that down on the sheet, or it was reported that way. When we checked into it, came to found out that Devin refused to play because he was going to be platooned with KJ Britt, who started the game, and KJ was going to play against the run. They're going to use Devitt in pass situations, and he essentially, I think, as the story goes, told them, "I'm not a rotational player," and that was it. Like they had enough, And I think there was a general feeling too that, Devin was, trying to convince his younger teammates that the Bucs don't care about you, they're not going to pay you, this sort of stuff. At any rate, he hasn't had any career since. He's bounced around quite a few teams. But the one thing I'll say, like knowing what he knows now, to say knowing what I know now, here's what I do know about Devin White. You don't win a Super Bowl without him. I don't believe it would have been possible. And I'm not sure who they would have taken 5th overall that year. But Devin White in 2020 was as responsible for them making it to the Super Bowl, and especially making it out of New Orleans to Green Bay, as any player on that team. The game he plays against the Saints, he takes apart Drew Brees and makes 2 of the biggest damn plays of the season. Fumble recovery, interception. He was all over the field, just all over the field. And I think he had 3 turnovers that he may have forced or been a part of during those playoff games. He was great. Now, was he disciplined? Did he really know what he was doing? Was Levante so fast still back then that he could cover up his mistakes? He could be the big eraser if Devin White shot the wrong gap and things like that. Yeah, I think probably some of that was going on. He was just such a great athlete that he was sort of out athleting everybody on defense. But I don't know that, I'm not going to try to say that Jason doesn't believe this, but I'm not sure that you win a Super Bowl without him. Like as great as Tom Brady was, am I wrong about that? I mean,
No, look, if you don't have Devin White, let's say the 5th pick there, what are you going to take? If you're going to take another middle linebacker, which you needed,
yeah,
you're going to take Devin Bush, who's not doing anything.
Devin Bush was the next guy, and he never had much of an NFL career.
No, the Steelers traded up to get him, I think, with the 10th pick.
Yeah.
I mean, it was rare to see 2 middle linebackers go that early, and neither one have panned out.
I mean, you might have gone with another position altogether, but I mean, what you really needed was that inside linebacker to play next to Levante. So,
I mean, I think if Jason were to rethink that quote, was he the right fit long term? No.
Right.
And we've talked about, did he really truly love football?
Right.
Like, he had all the natural ability in the world. I mean, an athletic freak. But if you don't love football, and I mean love it, the film work, the workout, all of it, like you're not going to last long.
Right.
At an elite level.
Right.
I mean, he's a freak. And yes, that New Orleans game, they may not win without him, period, which means you don't go to the Super Bowl.
You don't go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're sitting home.
I think there's some revisionist history a little bit of, he would be off my board and, I wouldn't take him. Well, I mean, was it a mistake pick? Would you like your number 5 pick overall to be off your team already? No. But he did help you win a Super Bowl.
Right.
Let's not deny that.
Right. If he'd have been a bust from day one, right? If he'd have been a locker room issue from day one, he wasn't. He
Mhm.
really wasn't.
No.
It got worse as it went along. And I would say this, that I remember talking to John Lynch, because a lot of players are overdrafted, right? Like it's easy to say, well, this guy, should have never been picked in the top, 20 picks or first round, whatever. That was not the case with Devin White. Like there was very much a consensus because inside linebackers don't go in the top 10. They just don't. Right? You got to be so special. It's ridiculous. And I remember being at the combine and asking John Lynch, because everybody had the Bucks, sort of slotted for taking Devin White. And I said, is that John, is that a reach at number 5 for Devin White? He goes, "Oh no." He goes, "It's not. He's special." He goes, that guy, he goes, "If you're going to do it for an inside linebacker, that's who you do it for." He liked him as a football player. He thought he was worthy of the 5 pick.
I don't
And
think there's anybody who didn't like him as a football player.
no, you didn't know exactly why he played. Like the thing about there, look, it's hard to fathom this, right? That you can be such a tremendous athlete. But if you go back and you research Devin White, from Cotton Valley, Louisiana. I mean, Cotton Valley is as it sounds, right? It's one of the smallest little towns in Louisiana you can imagine. Okay. And this kid, as I did his story when he was coming out, was dunking on people at age 11 and 12. Like that's how much of an athlete he was. Like there was a basketball coach who's like, who's that kid? He's like, oh, it's Devin White. Well, what year is he in high school? Oh, he's 12. Like, wait, what? um, so he was a basketball player, and then when he played football, he went to LSU not as a linebacker. He went as a running back. Think about that. Dude went as a running back to LSU, where there was plenty of good running backs, but he weighed 200 and 25, 230 pounds. Turned him into a tackling machine while he was there. And not only that, but this is another little item about Devin, and I'm doing the Devin Defense Fund here, whatever. Um, the other thing you find out is that the guy had a 3.5 GPA. What does that say about him? Okay. Well, it tells me that he achieves. He's an achiever. Like he could have played with a 2.0, right? But if he's going to do something, he wants to do it to the best of his ability. He made a 3.5. That's not easy to do in college when you're an athlete. So he had a little something about him. But I think what I think, as Peter King would say, is that once he got to the NFL, right? I don't know that he loved football. Certainly, he didn't love the film work. He out athlete everybody early in his career. Okay, and that will work, and it did work for him early on, all the way to a Super Bowl. But once he got some success, his personal habits did not change. He still wasn't in the film room. He still was undisciplined in his assignments, right? But the one thing I think that did change was he thought he was much worth a lot more than he was. You know what I mean? Like he thought that this ride was going to last forever. And frankly, after 4 years, he wanted $100 million. He wanted them to tear up the 5th year, which was a club option for 11.7, and say, "Here you go. Here's $100 million." And when they wouldn't do it, he soured on the entire organization. And not only did he sour on the organization, he affected his teammates that way negatively. There was a perception that he was telling other teammates, "Oh, the Bucks weren't going to take care of you," kind of sulking. And his play kind of reflected that. Now, he went through some stuff. His dad was imprisoned and died. And they still don't know exactly what the cause, what exactly happened to him while he was there. And that was before the game they played in Seattle against Germany, and he was tremendous. He was inspired. Kind of on the fence about whether he should play or not. Literally found out about it when he's getting on the bus to go to the airport. And then he dedicated that game to his father, and just was ridiculously good that day. And they beat Seattle at a time when they needed to. So he had incredible athletic ability. I don't think he loved football after the Super Bowl. And I talked about this story. The guy didn't really drink, and he he went on the cruise down the Hillsborough River but that really wasn't for him. That wasn't how he got celebrated stuff, right? So the Bucs, and I would assume Jason would be involved in this, but the Bucs went ahead and allowed him and made arrangements for Raymond James Stadium after the boat parade. This is post boat parade and avocado tequila and throwing the Lombardi and all of that. He goes to Raymond James Stadium and unloads his horse, right? And rides the horse around, which is really a cool thing when you think about it. It was a hell of a picture and a video. But he rides his horse around Raymond James holding the Lombardi trophy. And I just remember looking at it thinking, oh my God, because here's a young guy with all this success. And think about that visual, right? And what, combining his two biggest passions, right? And when he wasn't paid, I think he soured on the game. He wasn't disciplined in his play. And eventually they had to replace him with KJ Britt because they trusted KJ more. Not that KJ was a better linebacker or a better player. They wound up letting him walk to Miami as a free agent, but they just at that point, and he was a little nicked up as well. But I think negatively he may have affected that locker room, or at least the Bucs perceived he was, and they felt like they had to move on, and they did. And now, several teams later, we've not really heard. I'll still say this: for all the years I've done it, it's one of the most precipitous falls I've ever seen of a player who had that kind of impact, right, on a Super Bowl team, to what he is now.
Yeah, I think it was just. I think the success got to him, and when you don't love the football, you wanted the money, you wanted the other stuff.
Yeah,
and it got in his head, and that's where he's at today. Now, I mean, he signed for a couple million with Philly after
right.
the Bucs let him go,
and did not win the job and was inactive. Yep. And eventually, I think he was dealt to Houston, maybe, or spent some time down there, with the Texans, and really didn't play much there. He's just kind of bounced around. And, I think John Spytek, who knew him who did the scouting on him and the visits and all of that, felt like, well, let's give this guy another shot. I don't know how he's going to do, with the Raiders. I mean, Tom Brady's part of that too, obviously now. But
well, at some point, you're going to take a flyer because the freakish athletic ability.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you hope he, I don't want to say grows up, but finds his love again, or decides, hey, I want to do this. I want to make some money. I'm going to take it more seriously.
Yeah.
Or devote more to it, I should say.
Right.
And take a flyer on it. If it doesn't work out, you cut him.
I think grows up is a good term. I think maturity or lack of maturity was a problem. And, the other thing that happened after the Super Bowl was NFL Films and my friend Trent Cooper did an unbelievable full-length feature movie, basically about him, called Wild Horses. And it was about his life story. You can go back and watch it on NFL 360. And, he lost his brother when I think Devin was about 11 years old. I think his brother was about 13 or 14. His brother had gone to a church retreat, I believe, down in Texas. And the van they were driving in had a blowout. And I think it rolled over and several people died, including his brother, which was just a horrible, retelling of that story. And they, took him to the gravesite and talked about his love of horses and, all these things. So he's been through a lot of personal tragedy as well. So, look, I root for the guy. I mean, the one thing about Devin was, while I'm sure he was, sour in the locker room and maybe rubbed guys the wrong way, we would hold his feet to the fire and try to make him accountable. He was never unpleasant. He was never unprofessional with us as far as, doing interviews. Didn't want to do them when things weren't going well, obviously. Definitely wanted to get paid, but, he faced the music when he needed to. And a lot of guys got on his butt, like, guys like Warren Sapp and different people from outside the building. So he went through a lot, but yeah, it's just, I would just, and I know it's not what necessarily Dan or Jason probably wanted that story to be remembered for, but it's funny how people, you take that one comment and you go, whoa, wait a minute. Hey, what is this right here? But I think the bigger macro thing was Jason just saying, look, we didn't have any trouble identifying talented players, but we came to learn that it takes more than that. That character has to be at least on the same scale as the talent, for us to really be successful. And then the emphasis was that how many of these last 4 drafts, how many players have actually remained on this football team. Not the least of which is guys like Emeka Buka and some of the players they drafted this past year, just character guys straight across.
Mhm.
And so the message was, you know, you can draft talented guys, but you really need to find talented guys that also are unselfish and have great
Mhm.
character. And
But the one thing about, Devin compared to some of the others, he didn't have a character issue. Like, he wasn't getting in
no, I
trouble.
think he always said he was selfish.
He was selfish, but that's the thing when you're drafting 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds, you don't know
He
what
was
they're
very young too.
yeah.
He was young.
You don't know
yeah.
how they're going to mature and grow. So he wasn't getting in trouble. He
No,
wasn't being arrested. He wasn't in the headlines for bad things.
right. No, he wasn't
You
any
know,
of that. Mm-mm.
maybe he just didn't love football as much.
That's my
not,
guess.
That's not always easy to figure out at that age.
Right.
Because you turn on the tape and you go, wow. I mean, the guy
He's
flies.
incredible.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's, there are guys that got in trouble in college and then they get drafted and they continue to get in trouble. And then, then you can go, oh, we shouldn't have taken him.
Yeah, he wasn't an off the field character, but I think the thing that probably bothered him the most is sort of the negative messaging and the impact he had in the locker room. Because what happens is, like, if you're a young player, let's say you're a linebacker and you get drafted there, and Devin White is one of your main alpha guys that's won a Super Bowl, and he's got the hardware, and he's going into his 4th or 5th year, and he's telling people he's going to make $100 million, and then things don't go well. And now all of a sudden he's in that linebacker room and he's killing people, killing the organization. And those are young guys. They don't know what the NFL is all about, so it can have an adverse effect on your locker room.
No question about it. My question would be, what did you see from him in college that now you would say, well, in hindsight, I mean, it's easy to say 5 years later when he's doing that in the locker room, I wouldn't have drafted him. What did you see? Because you're always, after your draft and a few years down the road, you're evaluating, what did we miss? What did we do? What did they miss with his time growing up or LSU?
Right.
That led him to believe, or is it just, well, he turned bad in the locker room 4 and 5 years later, so we shouldn't have drafted him. Like, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And maybe there was something that they overlooked or just said, well, it'll be fine.
It's a great question. And I don't know that there is that one thing, and I think he said it best that, like, in hindsight, when none of us have the benefit of hindsight, right?
Right.
But in hindsight, I would say, yeah, it didn't pan out, but I'll tell you what, man, he was really good early on. Like, we won a Super Bowl with this dude. Like, I think I'd do it again.
It didn't pan out for what you hope your number 5 overall draft pick is, but he did help you win a Super Bowl.
Right.
And you're a franchise that has 2 of them.
Right.
And there ain't many of those.
I'd almost sacrifice a 5th overall pick that I only kept 4 years or so to win the ring. And he was all that. But even then, like, he was just out athleting everybody. Like, he was not disciplined his rookie year or his second year. Like, he was just freakish that way. But man, when he got going, Yeah, he was an interesting guy to cover because, like I said, he was never not cooperative with us per se. Obviously, at the end, it wasn't too pleasant for him, but he's fairly polite and just I describe him as just a country boy who loved riding horses. Like, that's like, that's really who he was. Suffered some real tragedy in his life and thought he was worth more than they were willing to pay him, and then when he got his chance, as a free agent, things kind of fell apart before he hit free agency. The timing was bad. And then when he got a chance to, do something and fill it up, he wasn't able to do it for whatever reason. And I don't know what that is. Maybe the Raiders, maybe they'll retap something in there that, that was there early, but I'm not sure at this point that, he's ever going to be that player. Anyway, interesting. Doesn't have anything to do with this season. And I would again encourage you to read the story in the Athletic. It's really good about Jason, his family history, and he also said that I guess his wife Blair, who, they're trying to decide whether to take Jameis Winston, who had a lot of obviously stuff off the field that followed him into the NFL, and when he met Blair Light, and they had Theo, their youngest son, was kind of fussy, and Jameis just took him and calmed him down, and so she was like, yeah, I kind of liked him instantly, like he was that guy, like he was, and just kind of convinced him he was a good dude. And
Maybe that's where the eating the W started, or they had some alphabet soup. And
that's right. That's right. They had those little alphabets, children's cereal or whatever. Yeah, I don't know, but that didn't work out for a multitude of reasons, and we've already talked about Jameis ad nauseum here. But anyway, look what the Bucs have done, what Jason Licht has done, after 6 years of no playoffs and one winning season under Dirk Cutter, was hire Bruce Arians, find his quarterback, continue to build, attract Tom Brady, and win a Super Bowl. And then after Tom retired, retool the entire team, get rid of the $80 million and over the cap, and draft extremely well for the last 4 or 5 years. Bring in a Baker Mayfield and make that work somehow. And now he's got a top 10 quarterback. He's got a team that's won 5 straight or gone to the playoffs 5 straight years in the NFC, which is the longest streak with more than one quarterback, has won 4 straight NFC South titles. And they really legitimately are, barring injury, one of the top teams in the NFC this year. And their expectations are legitimate. I don't know what Tristan Wirfs' injury and all that's going to matter, and if anybody else gets hurt. But he has turned it around, and not just in a big way, but in a difficult way, transitioning from Brady and one of the oldest teams to one of the youngest teams with a second quarterback. And let me just tell you, if they win a Super Bowl this year, holy cow, where does that leave Jason Licht in the pantheon of active GMs, right?
well, 2 of them. I mean,
yeah, 2 rings, man. There's not many walking the planet with 2 rings, GMs, that is.
nope.
So that would put him at another level, and he's still fairly young guy. He's not even 60 years old yet. So I think he's about 50 actually. So yeah, good on him. He's turning it around, and I will say, there's not a bad apple in that barrel over there. I mean, I've covered a lot of teams. These guys all believe in pulling the rope the one way, and they're unselfish players. I think they've looked for that. The leadership on this team is as strong as any team in the league, with guys like Evans and Levante and so on. So they have a chance. They have a chance, and we'll see what they do. In Pittsburgh, they're going to practice, I think, mostly the starters. I don't think many starters or any starters may really play in this game, on Saturday night. Again, don't know for sure. That's just kind of my feeling. They had to make some moves. They were short on cornerbacks and running backs. They brought in a couple of those, but the bigger headline is they had to waive Michael Pratt injured, which is disappointing for him certainly, but also for the Bucs. Like, I was really looking forward to this guy who was from Melbourne, quarterbacked at Tulane, had a really good college career, did a lot of things to impress them last year running the scout squad, and then somehow, and I haven't gotten a straight answer on this one yet, he injured his back. And typically when a quarterback hurts his back, or any skilled player like that, you're probably lifting something, right? You're probably doing squats or something. But I don't know that's the case necessarily. But he was waived, injured, and so for now at least, they're done with Michael Pratt, and that's too bad, because I was looking forward to see him. The idea was that he would compete with Kyle Trask, and many people thought that he might have won that backup job. Now, as it stands, Teddy Bridgewater's here. We'll see what he gets to do in this game. Still doesn't know the offense very well. Probably scrimmage a little bit against these guys. So it'll be an interesting week. But yeah, fun story. Check it out in the Athletic. Again, my good friend Dan Pompei wrote that, and yeah, the guys are in Pittsburgh getting ready to go. Hey, and if you like the Bucs, guess what? You're going to love the new exclusive collector's book that we're doing called Fire the Cannons, 50 Years of Tampa Bay Buccaneers Football. You can order now, and you can get 25% off. You can order that at bucks50.pictorialbook.com. That's bucks50.pictorialbook.com. Man, I helped write this book, 50 Years of Buccaneers Football. Of course, I covered most of that, not all of it. I'm not that old, but I have been here a while. And whether you're a diehard fan or maybe you're just nostalgic about the beginning days, the 0-26 to the NFC Championship game in 1979 against the LA Rams, and just all that stuff in between. It's not just a terrific read, but it's unbelievable photography, storytelling, and you can get 25% off today at bucks50.pictorialbook.com. All right, we got your mailbag questions coming up and a little bit of Rays news as well. But first, head on down to International Plaza Mall. That's where you're going to find the Breitling Boutique. That's right, Breitling Boutique, center of the mall, second floor. You talk about the greatest Swiss watches you can find. The Breitling Company's been in business now for over 140 years. They've been at International Plaza for more than 5 years. Now, I want you to go in there and spend some time in this beautiful store. They're going to pour you a drink. They're going to tell you about their gorgeous watches for the men's, the Navatimers, the Chronomat watches, women's watches for your wife or your girlfriends. These are sports watches, which are both durable and terrific looking. And they have an array of wristbands for your wife or girlfriend to choose from. And while supplies last, and that's important, they're celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with 32 different team watches. These are Chronomat watches, each team represented in the NFL. They have the team color on the face of the watch, the logo, you name it. Check out tampabay.com. You're likely to see a picture of the Bucs team watch at Breitling Boutique. Make sure you get down there. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. And when you go, let them know you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Rays continue their series out in Sacramento against the A's. I didn't realize that Taylor Walls had been nicked up, and now he's on the IL.
He is. So that leaves Ha-Seong Kim as the only shortstop really on the roster. Tristan Peters recalled he never left Oakland, or Sacramento, I guess, not Oakland.
Gotcha.
Never left, so he's now activated again. And so Walls, he said some running, felt some tightness in his leg.
Yeah.
And so they're just being precautionary, I think.
Well, they need to make some hay in this series against the A's for sure, and then it's on to San Francisco, try to salvage this road trip with some wins. But, trailing 1-0, I think, early in that game. We'll see. It's been a trying year for the Rays, and momentum is fleeting. It comes and it goes just as quickly, and they need to build somehow with this, 19 out of 22 that they're in the midst of, which is just a brutal stretch that I'm sure they'd like to reconsider how that went down. It's ironic. Like we're still getting storms at night. There's no question about it. There's still plenty of thunderstorms around, but they come and they go, and it's summer in Florida, and you might have had some rain delays, but overall, I think they could have lived with it without having to flip the schedule this way. And, if they had to play there again, we'll see. I think the idea is for them to be back in the Trop next year, right?
That's the plan. I mean, they're continuing to repair the Trop. The roof is, I think they're either preparing or starting to put it up. I think it's just preparing right now.
Yeah, it's not the panels, but the pre-panels, sort of.
The hope is the roof will be on, I think, by December.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to fix everything else inside because it's been basically gutted.
Yeah,
because everything was destroyed.
It's a curious time to start rebuilding that because, not for nothing, but like there's starting to be some tropical storm / predicted hurricane patterns out there right now.
Yeah, I think they would have liked it earlier, but you had to make the panels first, and then it's being assembled in China. Like it wasn't that they just waited and said, "Hey, let's wait for hurricane season to put these up."
Right. It would be good. We could test it.
But if they wait till after, it's going to be too late to play next season.
Yeah,
so
it would be. Yeah.
They need to hope for a little luck that they don't get hit this year.
Stay away from the big wind. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's watching that one pretty closely. I think so far we're okay, but we'll see as we move forward. Okay, we got a couple of mailbag questions before we get out of here. Let's get started.
Yeah, actually, we had a lot of them, so we'll get to more tomorrow night too. But
sure.
Craig had tweeted. He said Chris Braswell played into the third quarter and really was no factor in the game. He didn't play in the playoff game. With Walker out for the year, Bucs need more from him. Is his spot in jeopardy? Would the Bucs keep him, but also sign a vet and make him inactive unless an injury happened?
I think he's on the team. I think Braswell is going to make this team. I think sometimes your draft status sort of determines that. And it was interesting because I kind of saw the same game everybody else did. But when we asked Todd Bowles about him on Monday, he said, no, he actually played pretty well. And we're like, yeah, but he didn't seem to do anything. Like he didn't have tackles for losses, he didn't have a sack. And he just said that, well, he had really good explosive get off and a couple times he didn't finish the rush and but it sounded a lot like what they would say about him a year ago. So sometimes perception is reality, but I'm with you. Like Chris Braswell needs to show up in these preseason games. You're likely not going against number one offensive lineman. I know he's trimmed down a little bit. He should be a little bit faster. Certainly, he's got plenty of competition and rotation there on the outside linebacker position, but um, no danger, I don't think, of being cut because if you kind of look at where they're at depth wise, you're going to have Anthony Nelson. You have Hassan Reddick. You have Yaya Diaby and such. So I think he's going to be one of their guys, but he's got to get going, man, or this is turning into one of those high picks, a second rounder that may not pay off.
All right, Matt tweeted. He says, "Is there too much attention being paid to Shilo Sanders? Don't get me wrong; he seems genuine and likable. But the media attention he seems to get, you would think he was a high draft pick. But we drafted 2 defensive backs ahead of him. What are the chances he actually makes the team?"
Well, first of all, he had a really good game. I mean, if you're going to evaluate preseason games, like he was assignment good, and he had that one rush where he was unblocked. It was kind of a bust as far as their blocking goes. At least the quarterback didn't throw it hot, and he hit him as he threw it. He was pretty nervous. He said going into the game, he was excited, and he felt like it was a lot like Shador. Probably a little too amped up early, but then once he was in there, it was just football. Look, if just the numbers, like if you just look at the number of safeties, they'll probably keep 4, maybe 5. Like a lot of it depends on special teams, and he's been a guy that's been very willing and capable of doing it. If I just had to guess, if I was making book, I'd say he's probably going to be a practice squad player, which not to sneeze at that. I mean, you can make a pretty good living doing that, 250, 300,000, whatever it is as a rookie. And most of those guys, because of injury, wind up on the active roster before the year's over. So I think he could definitely make the team, but I think it's more likely he's a practice squad player.
All right, the other kid tweeted. He says, "Rick, after the Bucs' latest draft, you seem pretty down on the immediate aftermath. You questioned the pick of a wide receiver in round 1, and you were concerned with the Morrison pick after coming off an injury. You don't seem as down on the draft class now. Has watching training camp changed your mind?"
Well, losing Tom Jones was difficult for all of us because somebody had to be spring loaded for negativity, and that fell on me.
Who?
Exactly. Yeah, where is that guy, by the way? Holy cow. We got to call him, get him on. He said the other day to me when we were going back and forth, "Hey, you need me on." So I think he's jonesing for a little bit of podcast love. I wasn't down on Emeka per se. I felt like their needs were bigger. Most people felt that way. But again, going back to the discussion we were having about Devin White, Jason Licht has evolved and his staff about, who a Buccaneer man is. Remember, they put the silhouette of Levante David up with all these, traits that they're looking for. And Emeka checked all those boxes. Now, at 19, he's going to turn out to be, I think, one of the bigger bargains in the draft. I really do believe that. I also think that Chris Godwin and his uncertain status, look, we've not even seen him run, like jog, like with a trainer, like anywhere. Okay. We've seen him walk out to the field in his hoodie. But I don't know that he's very close to playing. So they were smart to do exactly what they did. They were very smart because you had Jalen McMillan. Mike is, knock on wood, extremely healthy and just killing people in practice. So if you can have Mike and Jalen and then add a Mecca to it, now you don't lose a beat. And then when Godwin gets back, you're even better. So it was more about the player, not the position. They fell in love. First of all, he was very productive at Ohio State, didn't have to stay, but chose to stay. had over 1,000 yards, and catches everything, can play all 4 receiver positions, quick study, really a perfectionist by nature. Like, he's just kind of anal that way. He doesn't know why he's like that. He's asked his parents, and they don't know why. But he's exceptional. And Baker Mayfield trusts him, and that's the best thing you can say about him. So they went for the better player, and that's what you should do. Otherwise, if you draft for need, you reach. You just do, and you miss good players. So I think they did the right thing. Yeah, I was surprised they took a receiver. However, not that surprised. If you go back and read my draft coverage, you'll see that I said I had a story. Could the Bucs take a receiver with their first round pick? And here's why it makes sense. And they did exactly that. Now, I didn't know whether it would be a Becca or not. I think he's going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate, if not a strong candidate for that award, which is hard for a receiver, especially when you have others like Mike Evans in that. So I stand by my doubts, but I also reserve the right to evolve. And at first blush, it looked like, you really didn't address your biggest need. And then it became, you got a really great player. I mean, this guy has a chance, depending on where the ball goes, he has a chance to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. And that's really saying something.
Quick side note before we get to the next question. I've got SportsCenter on here. Paul Skeens gave up a first-inning home run to the Brewers tonight. It's the first-inning run he's given up all year in 25 starts.
No, it's not. Come on.
That's crazy.
He hadn't given up a run in the first inning all year?
That's what it said on SportsCenter. I just saw it on the screen.
You know what's so insane about that? Not just the fact that he did that, but you're facing the top of the order to start every game. You're facing the arguably 3 of the 4 best hitters in the lineup.
Yeah.
To start every game, and you bagel them every single time out. That's incredible.
It is.
He's sick.
All right, Captain Bucks had tweeted, will the Buccaneers defense, bolstered by new additions, finally generate a consistent pass rush to elevate them to a top-tier unit?
That's the hope. I mean, look, as far as sacks go and pass rush, and depending on how you define it, they're always going to have around 45 or 50 sacks because Bowles will dial it up if he can't get it organically. And what I mean by that is he wants to rush 4 guys. He wants 4 guys to get home on the pass rush every play. Now, he's also fond of blitzing at all kinds of times. And he will use extra defenders and, to do just that if he feels he can't get there with his down linemen, his 4 down linemen. But this year, I think is going to be a little different because you add Hassan Reddick to the mix. You add a perhaps healthy Kalijah Kancey, who may not miss the first 5 or 6 games of the season for the first time in his career, and the way he looks and how quick he is. You could really have something here. You really could. So I think they're going to be able to rush the passer with 4. I think he'll blitz in opportune times. And look, they're going to finish somewhere between 50 and 60 sacks. Braswell has to play better. There's no question about that. He's got to find a way to finish his rushes. I don't know if it's his body type. I mean, there's not many guys that come out of Alabama at that position that aren't successful in the NFL, and that's what's kind of head scratching right now. But you know what makes you a better player sometimes is playing with better players. It's going to help Yaya Diaby that Reddick's on the other side. He's not going to get the double teams. He's not going to get the chips. All that attention will be paid to somebody else, and then Diaby has to take advantage of it. So I like what they have up front. I think the plan will be to try to rush 4 when you can, bring your pressure in opportune times, and play tight coverage. I think that's been the biggest change is, you look at some of the early plays that were made, whether it was Benjamin Morrison, all their young defensive backs. Jacob Parrish was, I think, the first pass of the game he knocked down. He had 2 passes defense in like the first quarter. Those guys really showed up, and that's going to help your pass rush too. So somewhere between 40, 55 sacks, and hopefully, this time your defensive linemen, whether you're outside linebackers Kalijah Cansey or Vita. So hopefully one of those guys lead you in sacks this year. Cansey has said he can lead the league in sacks. I like the bravado, man. I really do. But you're talking about Aaron Donald status if you do that at defensive tackle. So he's poised to have a big year too.
We'll wrap up on this one. We'll get to more questions tomorrow because we had lots of them sent in today. But Terry had emailed. He said, my questions is about the defense. Todd Bowles touts a 3-4 defensive scheme. But to me, it looks nowhere near the 79 Bucs defense that we had with Randy Crowder over the nose tackle over the center and defensive ends Leroy Selman and Wally Chambers. To me, Bowles' defense looks like 2 defensive tackles, Cansey and Vea, but no third D lineman. How could it be a 3-4? P.S. I walk and listen to the show, but also go on YouTube and give it a thumbs up to help the cause.
What's the guy's name?
Terry.
Terry, thanks, brother. Thanks for the thumbs up, too, and enjoy your walk. Yeah, it is a 3-4 in the sense that, your outside linebackers are kind of stand-up outside linebackers, and they do drop in coverage often. So they'll have their 3 down linemen, with Cansey, Vita, and Logan Hall. Okay, that's the interior of your D line. Those guys are going to rush unless last year in Dallas when he dropped Vita Vea and the guy completed a pass to the tight end and he came downhill and just destroyed him. It was like, oh my God, because he's such a great athlete, but. Those are your staples. That's your staple of the quote unquote D line, but we know Bowles and it really resembles more of a 4-3, sometimes 5 D linemen. On the line of scrimmage if he walks up both outside linebackers. Now out of that, they're just so they can disguise so much more, right? You can just walk guys up, drop guys into coverage. Blitz the A gap with the linebackers, bring the safety down. They're mostly a cover 3 team. Sometimes they can get into cover 2. I think this year you'll see a lot more press man on the outside, trying to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and really tightening up the coverage to give that rush a chance to get home. So especially with Bowles, it's more of an amoeba type defense where you're not supposed to know exactly who they are or what they are from down to down. They want to disguise things, and you get a ton of flexibility when you can walk up linebackers on the outside, or edge rushers, I guess you would call them, anytime you want to. And those 3 inside guys, look, Logan Hall has improved as much as anybody I've covered. Last year he had 5.5 sacks. He's changed his body. He looks bigger than hell. We know what Vita Vea is. He just forklifts the center and a guard back into the quarterback's lap. And then Cansey has predicted he's going to lead the league in sacks if he stays healthy. If he plays 17 games, he says, I think I can do it. I think he can lead the league in sacks. So imagine if you get all those performances out of those guys. So don't get too caught up in where the X's are, but just whether or not they manage to get pressure on the quarterback. And that's really what Bowles' defense is. It's a pressure-oriented defense. They do take chances. They try to get up in the receiver's face a little more than they did last year. They let him catch the ball in front of them. It was way too soft, and now they're gonna have to plug that up. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not the way you would draw it up. But then, Todd Bowles likes to have what he calls chess pieces. And he likes to move guys around, move them in, move them out, move them all the way from safety, move them back. That's just the genius of his schemes. They're very complicated, but they got a lot of versatile guys, and it just kind of starts up front. All right, so hey, before we go, make sure you guys get on down to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the beautiful watches, the men's watches, the Navitimers, the Chronomats, and watches for your wife or your girlfriend. These are sports watches with a beautiful array of wristbands to boot, and also the NFL's collection celebrating the 104th year anniversary. 32 teams, 32 different Chronomat watches representing each team in the NFL while supplies last. That's Breitling Boutique in International Plaza Mall. Thanks as always for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.